week. We're streaming to you live from Facebook, and we're excited because tonight we have a guest. And as usual, we like to let you know where we're coming from. We're at the Institute House in Gitanagri. And of course, we are coming to you live from Inter IFAST, which is a branch of IFAST that was founded by His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And we have our team on tonight also. Leela's here, Kishori's here, and our special guest, Madhavacharya Prabhu. So we're so excited that he's with us. Madhava is one of the foremost and first disciples of His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And he is known all over the three worlds, I think, for his dedication and devotion and just the services that he has done for the Institute over the years. As I share with you always, Madhava and his wife presently, they're facilitating the care of the Institute and all the activities that goes on. And we're eternally we're so indebted to them for all the services that they do. So tonight, as always, our series on Thursday nights is based on being calm, confident, and courageous. And Madhavacharya Prabhu, who happens to be a doctor, and he works in a role of an anesthesiologist. And so he's on the front line in one of the major hospitals in Washington, D.C. And so we want to ask him, you know, he's balancing his spiritual life with having to be out there in the world and deal with so many different situations. And we want to know from him, what is that like? You know, what is it like for you, Madhava, to be a spiritualist and at the same time be in the midst of all this uncertainty and crisis that's going on in the world? Please share with us, and we're so happy you're here.
Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you for your kind invitation. Actually, it's difficult. It's not easy. I'm in an environment where there is a tremendous amount of anxiety and fear on a scale that I've never seen before. In this country, after 9/11, there was a lot of general kind of fear, but this is much more intense. And so it's a little difficult to be in an environment with that type of energy, very intense, you know, fear and anxiety and concern. And it takes a lot, and not to get influenced by it. It's a little difficult. It takes a lot of energy and focus, and, you know, some discipline, and so yeah, it's not easy. We are in the hospital where I'm in. The hospital has been taken over by COVID patients. It's 3/4 of the patients in the hospital now are COVID positive. So there are hundreds of them. And my responsibility is to gown up and intubate them when their lungs fail. And so the time that you are most likely to get infected by the virus is when a patient coughs or creates an aerosol through coughing or sneezing. And in the process of intubating, that happens all the time. So I have to gown up and have all of this equipment on and do that. And I do that every day. I did this last night. I was on call last night doing that. And so it's, you know, it's a little, it is intense. However, I will say this, it has some positive effects on me in the sense that, you know, my rounds have never been better. I'm, you know, constantly praying and asking for Guru's blessing and Radha Gopinath's mercy to be able to function in a way that I'm able to bring some at least some calm or at least to let people know in the environment that, I'm seeing them and I understand what they're going through, and I'm their well-wisher. So that's what I try to do.
Wow, sounds quite intense, Madhava Prabhu. Ooh, just hearing what you're sharing is, wow, it brings goosebumps on my arms because, I just think, what's that like for you to be so close, to these patients? And like you said, you can easily get the virus. So you mentioned about chanting your rounds has never been better, and I know that you are a very dedicated spiritualist. And for those new persons that are on our series, I'm wondering if you could explain, like when you say chanting your rounds, like I know that you mean calling on God's name, and I'm wondering, how does that keep you calm? Does that keep you confident in that atmosphere? And does that give you confidence when you're dealing with the patients?
I can say that it's my anchor. So there are three things in my life that really anchor me, that keep me balanced. And those are, of course, chanting the Lord's names. I do a deity service. We have deities here at the house. I do deity service every morning before I go out to work. And then the third thing is just my association with the Vaishnavas here at the house. So those three things kind of keep me balanced. And it keeps me calm. In terms of the confidence, ideally, my focus is on the service, and that's when I feel like I'm at my I'm being used or being a conduit in a very positive way for Guru's mercy. So if I can just kind of, of course, there's a balance. So you have to take all precautions, but then really focus on seeing the person in front of you and kind of getting in touch with their suffering, because they're suffering, and feeling that and trying to offer some kind words or some kind gestures or a kind touch. And to the extent that I can kind of, take care of myself, but focus on the patient, to that extent, I'm calm and not anxious and doing well.
Mm. Leela, we have our team on, and our team they like to ask questions. So I'm gonna ask Leela if she has a question for Madhava Prabhu at this time. Leela.
Yes, hi, thank you, Madhava Prabhu, for speaking to us. There's so many interesting things about what you're saying, even starting from how you try not to take on all those energies. But then you talked about getting in touch with the person, the patient's suffering. And I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about where we find the capacity for all of that, because there's so much of it. And so as a doctor, before you would see that, and now you're seeing that times a lot. And so if you can talk about a little bit of this quality where sometimes it feels like we can't take on any more suffering, especially as caretakers and caregivers, and where do we find the space to be able to take on more of that?
So, to the extent that I can kind of forget about my own fears and focus on service and focus on trying to do something to make my Guru proud, to that extent, my capacity is broadened. That capacity that you speak of is broadened. And I put a lot of emphasis on the word balance because, you know, on the one hand, you know, you want to be sensitive and compassionate and focus on the suffering. On the other hand, you have to be, you know, on the other hand, you're connected to this wonderful spiritual tradition and this wonderful spiritual inspiration that we all carry, which is very blissful and protective and strengthening. So there's this balance. You know, you're not overwhelmed. You know, you don't want to be overwhelmed by the suffering. You don't want to be aloof from the suffering and not compassionate. And you want to be, you know, an effective servant. So it's you know, we're all we all have our own battlefields that we fight on every day. Every day is a battle. And so this is just the battlefield that I'm on right now. You have your battlefield and everyone else does. So, but I think the same principles apply in all these different variegated arenas.
Whoa, amazing. Yeah, Lila,
Thank you so much for that. There's so much here to just the selfless service that you're giving, because you keep going back to taking yourself out of what's happening, really diving into what's happening with the person and diving into the actual service, what you're doing, being the conduit. So that in itself is that amount of focus. So you're saying, from what I heard, you're focusing on the anchors that keep you in that space, and then focusing on your actual duty, and that's just beautiful. I think we can all use that reminder. So thank you so much.
So there's a tendency where what I'm doing, there's a tendency to kind of not see the person as a person, but see them as a disease. Do you know what I mean? Particularly because they have a disease that can kill you. You know? So there's a tendency to, you know, okay, this is a disease. I have to be on guard, and then not see the person and the spirit soul beyond the disease. So that's what I, you know, that's what I work on.
Hey.
Kunti's here.
I see. Kunti's coming in. Anna, are you on? If you're on and you have a question, this is the time. Anna?
Hi, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for sharing. This is such deep realizations. You have such a huge spiritual practice, you know, for like a lot of experience in that area, and it's so humbling that you can see for yourself that these tendencies are present. I don't have a lot of years of spiritual practice, and these tendencies are present for me all the time. So is there anything you could suggest for people who also don't have a lot of spiritual practice, or who are just beginners? So how do we see each other if we are not, our minds are not trained to see another person as a spiritual soul, if we kind of see them as danger, or like how do we kind of like shift our focus away from that and more into acceptance of each other, like we are against the disease versus you against me because you can give me the disease?
Okay. So part of it is always seeing yourself as a beginner. I'm a beginner too, you know, and so we all are dependent on mercy. Yes. right? We all are dependent on the mercy of I mean, if it weren't for my guru's prayers, because you know, I have no other qualification. It's just the prayers of my guru that actually keep me engaged in devotional service. So, yeah, if we can strive to always see ourselves in this dependent position, if we can strive to, you know, this is the fight, this is the battle, to always see ourselves in a dependent position, to always see ourselves as being carried by the mercy of Guru and Krishna, then they will gift us. They will give us this boon of being able to serve them in some, you know, some way, which in some function. So the foundation is, you know, always, you know, I mean, I'm not, whatever I do, it's you know, by their mercy, it's their power, it's their intelligence. And to the extent that I can remember that, this is all Krishna, and I just want to please my Guru because he's given so much to me, and I know he loves me, and I'm just trying to reciprocate a little bit to the extent that I can keep that kind of as the foundation of my consciousness to that extent, and everything else will work out. But, you know, I'm a beginner too. It's a battle.
Mm.
Thank you so much for answering the question. I heard that if I want to try to follow your example, I would have to build my foundation as a gratitude, right? Gratitude would be my foundation, and then on that I would try to build the realizations, all the realizations. I would try to pray for them that everything that I possess, I would try to give to credit the Lord for, instead of credit myself for. And then so that will allow me to progress. Do I understand correctly?
Yeah, humility and gratitude, those lovely twins. You know, because with humility has to always be there, because if you're not humble, then it's hard to be grateful, because you feel like you're deserving of whatever you're getting based on your own abilities. So to actually be really grateful, you have to be humble. You have to, humility has to be there too. And the humility is just that realization or acceptance of the fact that you're completely dependent on Krishna's power and Krishna's plan. I mean, he pulls all the strings all the time, and that the reason why he's doing it so wonderfully on your behalf is because of the prayers of your Guru. And you know, that's it.
Thank you so much.
Kishore Rani, she's our tech person. She's a tech part of our team. And, you know, everyone on our team, they all know that you're like our older brother. And for them, their spiritual uncle.
She brought me to Krishna consciousness, Raja Leela. So she trained me in Krishna consciousness.
Come on.
She's demonstrating humility right now. This is a wonderful example.
So Kishore Rani is embarrassing me. Kishore Rani, do you have a question for Madhava Prabhu?
First of all, I'm really grateful. All your words, they just, I don't know, go deeply to my heart. Like you can feel that every your word comes from the experience and goes so deeply. I'm really grateful to you. And for me, it was important to hear about battlefields, that every one of us has our own battlefield, because I have the feeling that like a lot of people are there serving, and I'm kind of hiding here in a warm like apartment in front of computer and not helping. But you reminded me today that, like, yes, my battlefield right now here at home with my family, and maybe tomorrow I can be there on the front line. And thank you so much for the serving on the front line and being such amazing example, and such amazing, like, all the people who are serving right now, where we all owe you so much. And like, it's probably my internal, I don't know if it's relevant, this question to you, but it's my internal question, because today I heard this question was from somebody else. There is a doctor and she has a family, 4 kids. And now she's like, they're letting her not to serve in the hospital, but she feels that it's her duty to serve in the hospital. But from other hand side, it's also her duty to serve to her kids. And I cannot imagine how, like, people in this position can make a decision. It's so hard when probably you see so many people around you with making those decisions every day. I really admire all of you. Thank you so much. It's impressive. Thank you.
Thank you for your service and for your sweetness. Thank you.
Yeah, it's Kishore Irani that makes it possible for us to bring these live programs every week so that we can bring people like Madhavacharya Prabhu to share. So we're really grateful to her and to the other team members that comes on every week. I have another question for you, Madhava Prabhu. You know, you are aware of the fact that, you know, you have a different identity other than your body. You are aware that you are a spiritual being, and that kind of puts you in a position where you can be calm and, you know, in those environments. I'm wondering, with your coworkers that may not have that understanding and they have to deal with the turbulence of what's going on, how are you able to assist them?
That's a really good question. And to the extent that I do assist them, part of it is just, and as you know, if you can be in an environment where people are anxious and you can project calm, if you are in an environment when people are fearful and you can project steadiness and balance, then that's a very important contribution. Just that, because people feel that, they're attracted to it, and it has an impact on them. And they want to know more. And they want to talk to you about it. And they come to you and say, well, you know, I'm feeling really anxious, you know, so I can say, well, you know, you should try prayer. I can't proselytize at work, but I can give some general messages. I can send them some videos or some links to some things, to some more kind of universal messages that Vaishnavas are doing to bring them along the path of increasing their God consciousness. But the first step is really just you modeling in that environment balance and compassion and calm. That's the first step. That everything else flows from there. I'm not saying I'm always successful, but that's the reality.
Yeah. Wow.
There's a story by Mandela when the plane was going down. You know that story, when he was on a plane and the plane had lost power and it was about to crash, and he was in the seat and the people around him were freaking out, and he was just kind of turned over and put a pillow behind his head and said, "I need some sleep." And how people around him took great courage from the fact that he was calm within that chaotic situation.
Yeah.
They asked him later, how could you sleep and be so cool and when it looked like we were all about to die? And he said, of course I was fearful, but I didn't want to, project that to others because I wanted to, be a source of some positive, changing the atmosphere in a positive way. It's a nice story.
Yeah. It's definitely a nice story. And I know that that's what you're bringing in that atmosphere. I just know it must be really difficult because.
That's my aspiration.
Well, I know you and I know what you bring. And, it seems to me like people in that atmosphere, because of the fear that they may get the virus, they can be really disturbed in the mind also, right? So anger would be really prominent in that atmosphere.
Yeah. Yes, all kinds of arguments. Yeah, definitely.
Wow. I'm just grateful that you're here to, to help all of us to understand the gravity, because, most of us are kind of tucked away, like Ishiri says, and we don't maybe understand. We have an idea in theory, but you're right there on the front line dealing with this. And I'm just imagining you having to put one of those tube things in someone. Whatever they call it. What is it now? What is it called?
It's an endotracheal tube, so they can be placed on a mechanical ventilator.
Yeah. And so in order for you to do that, you have to get kind of very close to those persons.
Yeah.
So I'm a little curious, the people in your home, because I know you give shelter to many people.
Yeah.
How do they respond to you, given that you are, back and forth from the hospital?
That's another very good question. And so I tell them what I do. I describe it to them. I tell them the precautions that I take. I shower at work before I leave. I change my clothes going into work, and I change them before I come home. Then when I come home, I leave things in the garage to the extent I can. And then I come upstairs and shower before I interact with anybody else. So I tell them what I'm doing, and so they know the risks. And, where everybody knows. And so if they, despite, my situation, if they understand it clearly and they elect to stay and serve Radha Gopinath, and that's what they do.
Wow. So even though there could be some risk, just because of you and your potency, your dedication, they're there.
Well, I think they're there because of Kunti, actually. They're here despite me, in spite of me, but they're here because Kunti, she's so kind and loving that naturally she attracts other kind and loving people.
Well, you both have those qualities, and both of you are just such amazing examples of disciples that are professionals that make such a contribution in the world, and at the same time make contributions in terms of helping people with devotion. So we're just so grateful. We're really grateful to have had you on. And is there any last thing that you would like to share with us to keep us balanced?
You know, I think it's interesting that how this will change the world, because it's going to have an impact on the world. You know, it's going to have an impact on the consciousness of people in the world. So I think it'll be interesting how devotees can, what function, what role they'll take in that post-COVID world in terms of helping people, you know, who have been through such a traumatic experience, helping them understand deeper meanings and deeper realizations of what this experience was about, what life is about, and somehow or other growing and becoming more whole and happy from it all. I think devotees will be, devotees like yourself, devotees like the people in the Sangha will be instrumental in that post-COVID transition.
Wow. So I'm grateful, Madhavacharya, that Bhakti Tirtha set up iFast, and that you are such an instrument in keeping iFast going, and that our iFast can be of some service, you know, both internationally and nationally. And so we want to do our little part, you know, all of us together, we can do something. I'm praying in order to serve what Bhakti Tirtha knew was coming. He knew many years ago that we would face calamity, and he prepared us, at least internally. And sometimes physically he prepared us to be ready for these kinds of calamities. So from the iFast, from the inter-iFast and our iFast, we're one group, actually, one organization. We want to thank you. And Leela is going to share with you some things before we close out.
I just want to say thank you for your time, and thank you for the inspiration that you're bringing, you know, at the end, saying that you're wondering what our role is going to be. And I took that as a personal, like, what is your role going to be? What are you going to do, you know, after this? So I'm so grateful. You're such an example of calm and confident and courageous, not just doctor out there helping people, but devotee, also taking your practice, you know, in all this calamity, you kept bringing it back to the practice, to being balanced, and how that helps you is the, you said foundation. So I'm really grateful. I think what I'm taking away from this is about the anchors, and seeing, you know, really seeing how you are giving the example, because you talked about the example of calm and confident, and you're going out there and doing all of these things, helping people, but also keeping your practice. Seeing that, I'm just so inspired. Like, I want to be like that, you know. I want to take things in this, with this spiritual maturity of knowing what to do, and knowing that we're still beginners and on this process. And I'm feeling really inspired. So thank you again. And please, please, please come back and talk to us.
Yes, Madhavacharya Prabhu, we're looking forward to you coming to our Memories of Bhakti Tirtha series. We're anxiously waiting for you, and we would love to invite you and Kunti again to keep sharing with us, keeping us on track, you know, with what's happening out there, and keeping us on track about understanding how to have a balance spiritually and materially. As you said, people are suffering, and you're out there. As always, you've always been out there. So thank you very much.
Thank you for you know, you're part of that foundation that was laid for me, since you instructed me and instructed all of us in the Institute. So thank you. Thank you all, really. It's been nice having your association. Thank you very much.
So we'll see you again real soon.
Okay.
Real soon.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.